Welcome to True Mythology. Today we are exploring Ares. Ares was the ancient Greek god of war, specifically representing the brutal, chaotic, and violent aspects of battle, embodying bloodshed, fury, and the raw emotional intensity of combat. He was the son of Zeus and Hera and one of the 12 Olympian gods who resided on Mount Olympus. In later Roman-era tradition, Hera conceives him alone through divine means as a response to Athena's unusual birth. In early Greek literature, he appears as a mature warrior in the prime of strength, often described as massive, bronze-clad, and terrible in battle. When he shouts, his cry is compared to the roar of thousands of warriors. When wounded by Diomedes in Book 5, his divine blood, ichor, flows, reinforcing that he is fully anthropomorphic yet unmistakably godlike. In Greek art, from the classical period, Ares is typically shown as a handsome bearded or sometimes youthful warrior, wearing a helmet and carrying spear and shield. He is physically idealized, not monstrous. He also possesses a chariot, often associated with his sons Phobos and Deimos, who harness it. The most supernatural elements connected to Ares are not his weapons, but his presence. His roar shakes armies. His arrival turns the tide of battle. Fear and terror accompany him. Ares' relationships with his fellow Olympians are not portrayed as warm or intimate in Greek literature. Unlike Apollo and Artemis, who are consistently depicted as close, Ares is often isolated. The Greeks generally did not admire Ares the way they admired other gods. He was often portrayed as reckless and disliked, even by his own father Zeus. In the Iliad, Zeus calls him the most hateful of the gods. The scene occurs in Book 5 of the Iliad, when Diomedes, guided by Athena, wounds Ares. Ares retreats to Olympus, bleeding ichor, divine blood, and complains to Zeus. Zeus' response is harsh, one of the strongest rebukes given to any Olympian.
Do not sit beside me and whine, you double-faced liar. You are the most hateful to me of all the gods who dwell on Olympus. You delight always in strife, wars, and battles. You have your mother Hera's ungovernable temper. I can hardly control her. It is because you are my son that you suffer this. If you had been born of another god, you would long since have been cast down beneath the Titans.
Despite the rebuke, Zeus orders Paean to heal Ares. Athena defeats Ares twice in the Iliad. In Book 21 of the Iliad, Athena confronts Ares directly. Ares charges toward her in anger, but Athena calmly picks up a massive boundary stone lying on the battlefield. As he advances, she strikes him with it, knocking him to the ground. Homer describes him covering a vast stretch of earth as he falls. Again, Ares is humiliated. Athena then boasts over him, asserting her superiority. In both scenes, Athena does not rely on rage. She remains controlled. Ares is consistently characterized as impulsive, volatile, and driven by battle fury. He is not given extended scenes of tenderness, reflection, or domestic warmth. That is almost certainly connected to his theological function. Because he personifies the destructive side of war, Homer presents him as emotionally excessive, rather than relationally warm. That does not mean he lacks emotion. On the contrary, he is highly emotional. In the Iliad, Ares does not move alone across the battlefield. Homer surrounds him with personified forces that embody different dimensions of war. These figures are not decorative additions. They form part of the poem's theological structure. War in Homer is layered, and Ares' attendants represent its psychological and physical consequences. The most explicit companion of Ares in the Iliad is Enyo. When Ares descends into battle on the Trojan side, Enyo accompanies him. Homer calls her Enyo, sacker of cities. If Ares embodies the fury of combat, Enyo represents its outcome, the destruction of cities. Her presence intensifies the devastation associated with Ares' entry into battle. Enyo The personification of war is closely tied to Eris the goddess, and personification of strife and discord, described in the Iliad as the same goddess, although in mythology sometimes viewed as two separate goddesses. Eris, in the Iliad, books 4 and 11, incites warriors and expanding as conflict intensifies. In Homer, Eris is described as a sister of Ares. She represents the ignition and spread of strife. Also linked to Ares are Phobos and Deimos. In Homeric tradition, they are connected with Ares' chariot. Their names mean fear and terror. And although they are not fully dramatized characters in the Iliad, their association with Ares is conceptually powerful. When Ares charges, fear and terror ride with him. The implication is that panic is not merely a human emotion, but a divine force accompanying war itself. Together, these figures create a structured vision of war. Eris stirs the conflict. Ares embodies its violent momentum. Phobos and Deimos generate panic among warriors. Enyo ensures destruction. It is also significant that Ares' attendants amplify his character, rather than soften it. The affair between Ares and Aphrodite is one of the most famous episodes of divine passion in Greek mythology, and it is told most fully in Book 8 of the Odyssey. Unlike later romanticized retellings, Homer presents the relationship with a mixture of sensuality, irony, and humiliation. Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the skilled but physically imperfect craftsman of the gods. Ares, by contrast, embodied physical strength, beauty, and martial vitality. The contrast is deliberate. Where Hephaestus represents craft and restraint, Ares represents heat, impulse, and embodied force. It is within this tension that the affair unfolds. Homer does not present Ares as indifferent or merely lustful. Rather, he is portrayed as deeply drawn to Aphrodite. His desire is urgent and bold. He enters her chamber openly, driven by passion rather than caution. There is no suggestion that his feelings are strategic or manipulative. Ares is rarely subtle in Homer, and here too he acts with immediacy. His attraction to Aphrodite reflects the natural alignment of their domains. Within mythic symbolism, their union conveys the idea that intense emotions, whether expressed as passion or conflict, arise from similar depths of feeling. Aphrodite reciprocates his desire, and the two meet in secret. However, their secrecy is short-lived. Helios, the sun god who sees all things, observes them and informs Hephaestus. In response, Hephaestus crafts an invisible, unbreakable net of fine bronze chains and lays it across the bed. When Ares and Aphrodite next come together, they are trapped. The scene that follows is less tragic than humiliating. Hephaestus summons the Olympian gods to witness the lovers ensnared. The male gods laugh at the spectacle. Ares, who embodies battlefield dominance, is reduced to immobility and shame. His humiliation stems from being caught, not from regret over loving Aphrodite. After Poseidon intervenes and guarantees compensation, Hephaestus releases them. Aphrodite withdraws to Cyprus. Ares returns to Thrace. The affair does not end in punishment or exile. It dissolves into the ongoing rhythm of divine life. Emotionally, Ares' attachment to Aphrodite appears intense but not reflective. He is not a calculating lover. He is governed by immediacy. His attraction to Aphrodite is consistent with his character. He is drawn toward beauty and passion as naturally as he is drawn toward battle. It was Aphrodite who convinced Ares to side with the Trojans. Ares' affair with Aphrodite produced several children, each of whom embodied different aspects of their parents. Eros, the personification of love and sexual desire. and Teros, the personification of mutual love and love returned. Phobos, the personification of fear and panic in the midst of the battle. Deimos, the personification of dread and terror before the battle. Harmonia, the goddess of harmony, who later married Cadmus, the founder of Thebes. Cadmus, renowned as the progenitor and inaugural ruler of Thebes, a formidable city in ancient times situated near Athens. While establishing the city, Cadmus encounters and kills the sacred dragon of Ares, an act that did not go unpunished. The god Ares, incensed by the demise of his son at the hands of Cadmus, decreed a punitive servitude for the valiant hero lasting 8 years. Yet in a surprising turn, Ares not only pardoned Cadmus after this period, but also bestowed upon him the hand of his daughter, Harmonia, in matrimony. The nuptials were grandly commemorated in Cadmea, with the presence of all the gods. In later traditions, Harmonia was gifted with a necklace which was described to be cursed. Hephaestus, still humiliated by Ares' affair, decides to craft and gift a cursed necklace to the daughter of Ares on her wedding day. The tragedies surrounding Cadmus's descendants, Actaeon's death, Semele's destruction, Pentheus's dismemberment are often understood by scholars as stemming from this original act of bloodshed against a god's sacred beast. In early mythic logic, killing a chthonic serpent associated with a deity could generate lasting miasma, ritual pollution, which passes through generations. The necklace of Harmonia, by contrast, becomes central to the curse in later mythographic tradition. In Apollodorus and later sources, the necklace clearly carries misfortune through the Theban line, particularly via Euryphile. However, in earlier poetic tradition, slaying of the dragon episode appears more foundational cause of the curse of the house of Cadmus, where inherited guilt and ancestral wrongdoing shape destiny. Despite Ares' raging temper in myth, he was not depicted as a sexual aggressor in the way Zeus or Poseidon frequently are. There is no well-attested ancient narrative in which Ares disguises himself to assault women or abducts them through deception. The myth of the murder of Halirrhothios is one of the most important episodes involving Ares, not because of its violence, but because of what follows, a divine trial. Unlike many stories in which Ares embodies uncontrolled aggression, here he appears as a father, avenging an assault, and the narrative becomes foundational to Athenian legal identity. The story is preserved in later mythographic tradition, most clearly in Apollodorus's Bibliotheca, and also referenced by Pausanias in his description of Greece. According to these accounts, Halirrhothios, a son of Poseidon, attempted to violate Alcippe, the daughter of Ares. When Ares discovered the assault, he killed Halirrhothios. This act set the stage for something unprecedented. Ares was brought to trial. Poseidon demanded justice for his son's death, and Zeus established a court of the gods to judge the case. The trial took place on a hill in Athens that would thereafter be known as the Areopagus, literally the Hill of Ares. In the mythic explanation, the location received its name from this very event. The court ultimately acquitted Ares. The killing was judged justified, as he had acted in defense of his daughter. This verdict is significant because it reframes Ares' violence as lawful retaliation rather than chaotic bloodlust. The story transforms him, if only momentarily, from a destabilizing force into a defender of family and justice. For Athens, the myth carried profound symbolic weight. The historical Areopagus became a council, and later a court associated with serious criminal cases, especially homicide. By anchoring the origin of that court in a divine trial, the Athenians linked their legal institutions to cosmic precedent. Even a god could be judged. Even divine violence required justification. In this narrative, Ares is not the reckless aggressor familiar from the Iliad. He is a father responding to an act of violence against his daughter. The story complicates his character and reveals a dimension often overshadowed by his portrayal as battle fury. Here, his violence is purposeful and defensible. Thus, the murder of Halirrhothios stands as one of the rare myths in which Ares' act of killing is framed within the language of justice. Greek authors consistently link the Amazons to Ares because they saw these warrior women as the living embodiment of his nature. The earliest surviving reference comes from Homer, who calls them Antianerai, those who fight like men, in the Iliad. Although Homer does not explicitly name Ares as their father, he frames the Amazons within the world of heroic warfare, the domain of Ares, and later poets build on this foundation. The clearer assertion of Ares as their father appears in later writers, in which the Amazons were daughters of Ares and the nymph Harmonia, or Otrera, the queen of the Amazons. Ares fathers a race of warlike women who establish their own society, train in arms, and wage campaigns across Asia Minor. Their martial nature is explained through their divine paternity. As children of Ares, they inherit courage, ferocity, and military skill. The ancient writer Diodorus Siculus, in his Library of History, describes the Amazons as a people who honored Ares above all gods and lived according to a strict military discipline inspired by him. Diodorus does not merely repeat a genealogical claim. He interprets their entire social structure as an extension of Ares' character. Their upbringing, training, and political organization are all shaped by the war god's ethos. In this sense, calling them daughters of Ares expresses both ancestry and cultural identity. The Amazon queen Penthesilea, who fights Achilles after Hector's death in the Trojan War tradition, is often described as a daughter of Ares in later sources. Her courage and tragic nobility on the battlefield reflect the inheritance of a war god's bloodline. Thus, Ares becomes father of the Amazons. By the classical and Hellenistic periods, it had become standard to regard the Amazons as his daughters. One of the most unusual and revealing myths about Ares is the story of his capture by the Alauadae, the giant brothers Otus and Ephialtes. This episode is not part of a grand cosmic war. Instead, it presents the astonishing image of the god of war himself, rendered helpless. The primary surviving literary source for this story appears in the Iliad, Book 5. In this passage, Dione comforts Aphrodite after she has been wounded and reminds her that even Ares once suffered humiliation at the hands of mortals, or near mortals. Homer recounts that the Alauadae, Otus and Ephialtes, who were sons of Aloeus, were giants of extraordinary strength and arrogance. In their hubris, they bound Ares and shut him inside a bronze jar. There he remained imprisoned for 13 months. Homer notes that Ares would have perished had he not been rescued by Hermes, who learned of his confinement from the giant's stepmother, Erobeia. Hermes secretly freed him and restored him to Olympus. Homer's account is brief but striking. It does not elaborate on the giant's motives in detail, nor does it dramatize a battle between them and Ares. Instead, the emphasis falls on the humiliation of the war god. The detail that he remained trapped for 13 months underscores the severity of the defeat. Later mythological sources expand on the broader narrative of the Aloidai. In Apollodorus's Bibliotheca, the brothers are described as colossal figures who attempted to storm Olympus by piling Mount Ossa upon Mount Olympus and Mount Pelion. They even sought to claim Hera and Artemis as brides. Their arrogance eventually led to their destruction when Artemis tricked them into killing one another. Ares stands as one of the most misunderstood figures in Greek mythology. In early epic, especially the Iliad, he embodies the raw, destabilizing force of war. Not strategy, not justice, but the surge of violence that overtakes reason. He is powerful, emotional, and immediate. He is wounded, rebuked, and even humiliated, yet never removed from the divine order. War in Homer's world cannot be eliminated. It can only be restrained. Ares personifies its chaos. This contrast defines much of his mythic role. He is not a cosmic ruler, not a lawgiver, not a master strategist. He is the raw on the battlefield, the heat of anger, the moment when conflict breaks loose. Yet Ares is not simply a villain. In certain traditions, such as the trial following the death of Halirrhothios, he appears as a father defending his daughter. In genealogies linking him to the Amazons or Theban royalty, he becomes a progenitor of fierce and independent lineages. His myths reveal intensity rather than cruelty, impulse rather than calculation. In Greek theology, Ares represents a necessary but dangerous force within the cosmos. He is neither beloved nor central like Apollo or Athena, yet he remains essential. Through him, the Greeks explored the nature of violence itself, its attraction, its terror, and its limits. Ares is not the glory of war. He is its reality. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Until next time, may the tales of ancient myth continue to captivate and inspire.